Good afternoon and welcome to BroadCAST, the webinar interview series by the University of Nebraska's Center for Academic Success and Transition, CAST. And our guest here today is quite impressive. He is a retired 25-year Navy captain, founder of Empowered Baseball Academy, and also head coach of the Mighty Griffins of the Gretna East Baseball program. BroadCAST welcomes here today Coach Darrell Everhart. Darrell, what an honor it is to have you with us here today.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Very humbled, very excited, and grateful all the same. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to spend some more time with you virtually and in conversation as well. So thank you.
The pleasure is all ours. And you speak with us today from the MRF, your facility at Empowered Baseball Academy. So how fitting. Baseball is going to be a theme throughout our conversation today. Even when we're talking about other stuff, we're probably also going to be talking about baseball. And that's easy to do, isn't it?
It is, because I think, and we'll probably talk a little bit about this, but there are so many parallels through the sport of baseball and life in general that
yes,
we have so many things to learn from. And
that's exactly so.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, we'll start way back at the beginning. I want to know what it was like in growing up in small town Iowa. And were you playing baseball already from the youngest of ages? And I want to ask before we get too far, this just occurred to me a little bit ago. Are you perhaps from the area that is the setting for One Shot at Forever, the great baseball book about the Iowa baseball team with Brian Snitker? Are you from anywhere around there?
I'm not actually.
Okay.
It's a
Because I
great book.
think it was you that recommended that book to me.
Oh yeah. Again, its themes are about baseball, but in sense, it's about life and lessons in life as well. Which, hopefully, just by me giving an opportunity to share a few things today, I want to be able to focus on things like life skills and some study skills, things that I've learned along the way, whether it being studying life or academics, and then kind of putting plans in place. But
Right.
that's a great book. It's a great story. Again, life lessons are all about that that opportunity and those situations throughout that story. But grew up in central Iowa, small town Iowa, although I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. So I was raised around the passion for Husker football, and
Okay.
I kind of give myself away here, but I remember the Bob Devaney days, and obviously Tom Osborne and such. But so I bleed Husker red, through, and have been raised in Iowa, small town Iowa. It was a small town, basically less than 1,000 people, and what I have is just the fondest memories of playing baseball very early on in life, backyard baseball.
Yeah.
Your buddies together, and you would go outside, and you would spend a lot of time imitating different players you had seen on TV or even listened to on the radio, which I used to listen to on the AM station, which we would pick up Kansas City because it was the closest there, or Minnesota, Minneapolis, so you could listen to Royals baseball on the radio. So
right.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have grown up in a time where we spent a lot of time outside just playing backyard baseball and taking it from there.
Now, as a young person growing up and a student at South Hamilton High in Jewell, Iowa, what was on your mind when you no doubtedly got asked the question, as all young people do, what do you want to be when you grow up? Did you have any sort of a notion about that? Was college even on your radar? At that point, and also, what did your family? What was their position on that?
Yeah, and I have again some of the fondest memories growing up in small town, and the school that I went to was South Hamilton High School, small town, Jewell, Iowa. 4 towns consolidated to make one school, And in that, we only had like 50 kids in my high school class. So,
Uh-huh.
not much more than, a little over 200 people in our high school class. And
A
I
lot of
had,
farm kids coming
oh,
in
yeah.
to that
Yes, there
school.
was. Yep. A lot of agriculture and farm around that area.
Yeah,
And
I know how that works.
yeah. And we had some of the greatest teachers who became my mentors. And that was something that inspired me to want to become a teacher,
Yeah.
and want to become a coach. And by playing the sport of baseball, it was one of those things that I wonder how far this might be able to take me. And going on to play afterwards, or after high school, going into college and seeing what it might be like. Because I think every young child's dream is, if you're into sports, is to think that you might be able to play at the professional level. And so that's what
You
kind
dreamt that maybe you were a big leaguer, a budding big leaguer. No, I'm serious. Is that
of.
true? You dreamt that perhaps you
Oh
could
yeah.
be a budding big leaguer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh well, yeah, because you saw it on TV, or you read box scores in
Yeah.
the newspaper, and you imitated these players, and you thought, you know what, I can do this. I think
Yeah.
I can make the bigs.
Now, how did it come about? I'm fascinated about this. I want to know how it ended up that you enrolled at Iowa State University. I imagine you being a hot shot baseball player out of South Hamilton, and the Cyclones recruited you to play baseball for them. Is that kind of how it worked out?
Absolutely not. No, it was so I was a first generation student, and they
Yeah.
had four
Okay.
older sisters, right? Well, there's four of us total, right? I got three older sisters, mom and dad. None of them ever went to a 4-year institution, right? Nobody went to college. And so it was a matter of figuring it out on your own. So in high school, you kind of figure that, I'm pretty much holding my own in high school baseball. I think I can do pretty well in all of this. I ought to consider maybe going to college and seeing what I can do there. And so, this predates, this live streaming and everything that we're doing now. It
Yeah.
predates cell phones. And so it was a phone call that I made to Iowa State admissions department. I asked them if they could send me an application. And then next thing you know, I'm filling out an application to attend Iowa State University. Um, Parents were very supportive in it. Although the first year after I enrolled at Iowa State, I stayed at home my first year because we didn't know what it took to really pay for everything, and it costs a lot of money. And
Yeah.
to live in the resident halls basically was doubling what it would normally have just cost if I just paid for tuition. So I stayed at home my first year, had
Yeah.
opportunities to go play at some other schools. But when you look at private schools, or you look at D2 schools, it was really expensive there. And so I stayed at home. And with that,
How close were you? How close was home?
yeah, and that's a great question, because it was about 30 miles away. So about a
That's
half hour.
not bad at all.
Right, right. So that's,
Very manageable.
yeah, very much so. And that first year, and even the following years, it became an expectation a little bit that my parents, my dad, because we lived on a farm, thought that I would come home every weekend, because that's just what you would do. And
To
so,
help out.
yeah, to help out around the farm.
Yeah.
They didn't know, and no fault to theirs, but they didn't know all of the additional work and the time and the commitment that it takes in college, right? And so,
Yeah.
and I was a walk on at Iowa State. That's how that kind of went. And that's another long story in itself.
Yeah.
But so I wasn't highly recruited, but I was one of those that really believed in perseverance, and I believed in myself, and I thought maybe I could give it a shot. And so that's how it started.
My own experience isn't entirely similar from yours, sans the baseball part of it, but there was some degree of expectation, I think, that I would come home on weekends and certainly summers to work at the gas station in Tecumseh. It took me longer to graduate, in part because I switched my major every time the wind changed direction. But I had to go home and work in the summers to be able to come back in the fall. In any case, now I want to ask you one other maybe two other baseball questions, and then we're going to talk about other stuff, I promise. And then we'll come back to baseball again later. Uh, what was it like, walk on or not, playing big time Division I baseball?
So we, again, it brings back like a lot of different emotions when I think about that. Cause say, I heard that there was a walk-on opportunity. So I show up at Captain Field out at Iowa State, as a freshman in the fall, and I'm going to walk on and make the team. And there was probably close to 70, 80 kids that were there going to walk on to the program. And so you look around and you kind of size guys up and you take a look at what it is that it might take to make the team. And so they practiced every day, 2 weeks straight, and you're throwing the baseball as hard as you can around the infield to make sure that they see how strong your arm is. And about every other day, they would do a cut process where they list off a number. I didn't have a name. I was a number.
Wow.
So they would list off a number, and those numbers were not invited back the next day. And so after 2 weeks, I was able to survive that, and myself and one other player made the team that fall. And so so that was pretty exciting. There was ups and downs because you were pretty excited that you were able to make the team. But the real tough part about it was, which was really another life lesson, was we weren't a highly recruited player, right? We weren't on a scholarship. We were walk-ons.
Yeah.
And there were some instances where you kind of felt like you were a leftover.
Second-class citizen.
Absolutely. So everybody else got, 1, 2, 3 pairs of warm-ups, and you got one. And some of it looked like it probably belonged to somebody else at one time. And so you really had to work hard. But I think I got so excited in the fact that I was a part of a team and that hard work had basically paid off that I was excited about just being there.
Did you have a feeling at the time as well, like, wow, I can do this. I can play at this level?
I thought so, right? Because I looked, and primarily because a lot of the players around me was, very highly skilled, and they were getting training, from high skilled instructors. And I really didn't receive a lot of that. And so I felt like the harder I worked with high skilled instructional work, being mentored, I could get a lot better. So I felt like it was a good environment.
Were you thinking at that point already that I could have a future in this?
Yeah, I did. As a matter of fact, because what was also happening at the same time while I was a freshman at Iowa State is I enrolled into the Navy ROTC program. So
I was going to ask you about that.
So I was a midshipman through the Navy Reserve Officer Training Corps and was fulfilling and completing their requirements to potentially become an officer in the Navy. And so I was going down a dual path, if you will, of those commitments that I needed to fulfill. And at the same time, practicing and playing baseball at Iowa State. And so, like you said, Dan, it was like, I'm pretty excited here. I've got an opportunity to go Navy, but if my baseball playing goes well, I might just stay with baseball and see where that takes me.
You were putting yourself in a great position that it not be an all or nothing proposition. You had a couple of different lines out and just created options for yourself at the time. That's so important.
Yeah. Until I got cut at the end of my freshman year.
Yeah. Now, I know that you went to some manner of baseball camp with the Cincinnati Reds. True?
That's true.
Tell us about that.
So it's really funny because so at the end of my freshman year at Iowa State, the head coach at Iowa State pulls me aside and a few others and says, "Hey, you really don't have what it takes to play what they called Big 8 baseball at the time. So I'm going to have to let you go. But you're more than welcome to try out again your sophomore year." And so I did. He told me things I needed to work on over the summer. I was completely passionate and engaged in what I needed to do, worked hard, came back my sophomore year, and I tried out, made the cut again, and then played my sophomore year at Iowa State. And so at the end of my sophomore year, the head coach says, "Sorry, Darrell, but we still don't have a scholarship for you. So we're going to cut you again." And at that point, I was pretty bummed out about it. But then that summer, after my sophomore year, I received an invitation it was the Cincinnati Reds, Detroit Tigers doing a combined tryout.
How did you receive that invitation? How did they know about you?
Yeah. So my understanding was when you were playing at Iowa State, they got a database that they would provide out in a mailing to any scouts that would come in the area And anybody that was on the roster got an invitation to that, which
Yeah.
which probably must have been a mistake because so I go to the tryout camp, and of course I'm pretty simple. I just figure hard work will pay off, and I gave it everything I had. And they did a similar thing. They did cuts at the camp. They broke it down, and there's hundreds of guys at this camp, and they keep two teams. And the two teams they keep, they make enough players to play the two teams play each other. And so I played on one of them. And after the game, one of the scouts and coaches, Ritas, comes over and starts talking to me about if I was interested in continuing to play summer ball. So that offered an opportunity to play with an independent level team that was sponsored by the Reds for the summer. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And did you feel confident in your ability at that point? Like I can play with these guys?
Absolutely. You feel like you're on cloud nine because, you
Bet.
feel like everything that I portrayed and did was good enough to catch the attention of a big league scout. And so
And not only a big league scout, but a Cincinnati Reds
uh,
big league scout.
because the Reds was the very first Major League Baseball team that I ever went and watched a game. And it was a
Yeah.
game where they played the Pirates, tie game in the ninth inning. Johnny Bench hadn't even played the entire game. They brought him in to pitch hit, and he hits a home run to win the game. So my favorite team, the Reds, back when the Big Red Machine, Johnny Bench hits a home run at the first game I ever go to. Fast forward in life, and I'm trying out at a workout camp with the Reds and then being asked to play. So yeah, I'm pretty much on
Awesome.
nine. Absolutely. Yeah.
That is terrific. Very good. Now, I'm going to veer away from baseball just for a moment. We won't get too far away. But I want to know about your experience at Iowa State as a student. I know that you got your degree in education, and I would like to know if that was an easy or a natural choice for you, or had you considered multiple possibilities? How did that work for you?
Yeah, so I had known from the time that I was in high school, having teachers who were just amazing mentors, patient. Um, you kind of feed off of the way they talk to people. They showed respect for others, and I thought, I think someday I'd like to be a teacher and a coach. Although
Yeah.
although I always had interest in the astronaut program. And I thought that someday I could potentially be an astronaut. And so aerospace engineering was where I first started my interest when I went to Iowa State. So I was an aerospace engineering first semester. And
Wow.
and I started that, and probably about probably about 2 weeks into that program, I realized they were talking a completely different foreign language than anything I'd ever known. The math and the science level was well beyond what I had ever studied. And so I quickly took an exit from that degree, and then they became an elementary education major.
Okay.
That I think steered me in that direction. So although
Why elementary ed?
because I think I still felt like I wanted to coach and be a part of influencing people in the right way as a young leader, is what I had those experiences before. And so I thought that would be the right venue that I could do that.
Okay.
Of course,
Okay.
as I was hanging out in the ROTC with all these other STEM related folks that were science, technology, engineering, and math,
I
uh,
bet you were.
I had to like modify my major a little bit. And I told them I was a double E.
You told him what?
Told them I was a double E major. And so therefore, I kind of felt like I was one of those electrical engineers when in fact,
That's hilarious.
elementary education was where I was at and loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, Darrell, let me run something by you. I want to get your take on this idea. What do you think of the idea of college as a time to try new things, test the waters, maybe even momentarily get a bit lost as you discern your pathway in life. I remember you did an excellent video for the Nebraska Promise program back in 2020. And I know your take on this, but I want to hear you say it as well. You said to our students, college is built for taking chances. Now isn't the time to play it safe. And I thought, brilliant. That sums up college.
Yeah. No, that I fully agree with that. I think when you get to college, my experience itself as an undergrad at Iowa State, is exciting, but it could be overwhelming because there's
Yes,
so much going on around you. And no matter what size of a high school that you may have went to or what other previous college you may have gone to, when you show up at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, there's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of
yeah,
ways to grow. Myself going to Iowa State, when I went there was something like 20,000 plus students that were there. And so getting lost, like you mentioned, could happen, right? You can get lost in a lot of ways.
sure. A lot of ways to get involved, a lot of ways to get lost if you want to.
Yeah. And so the best way was to get involved and to
Mhm.
find, those that could both be like-minded, to learn from a group and belong to a group, but it's also a great opportunity to find those that you're not like-minded with, because that's what
Absolutely.
it's an opportunity to grow. I thought I was an engineer when in fact I found others that was in education that really motivated me and said that, hey, there's a future there as well. So, yeah, I think it is an absolute great opportunity while you're in college to get lost. It's an opportunity to grow.
I like what you said to the importance of hearing others' diverse perspectives. I mean, the idea, I think, of going to college is to learn what other people think and see through someone else's lenses the world. You already know what you think, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think and we may have had this kind of talk before too, Dan, is when I got to college, um, there's a lot of different things that I learned in the different classes that I took. And one in particular that I thought was very helpful. And then we're talking in the 80s here. It was a class called Multicultural Studies. And one thing
Okay.
that was just fascinating about that class was, of course, I grew up in a small town, Iowa. Um, Everybody, pretty much looked the same, talked the same, and they thought the same, right?
Yeah.
So one of the first eye-opening classes that I was able to be a part of, and it was called Multicultural Studies, was, you know, there's a lot of different perspectives. There's a lot of different people that have come from different walks of life, and everybody, and this has been growing stronger and stronger through my life, is everybody has a story to tell. Um,
Yeah.
and it's so fascinating when you start to actually listen to what others have to say.
Right, absolutely. Now, I want to ask about some of the courses that you took in college from a different perspective. In my seminar courses at UNL, we talk about how a liberal arts university with that kind of wide curriculum contributes to making one a more well-rounded person. And I know that would be the sort of curriculum that you experienced as well at Iowa State. I wonder if you recall some of the most impactful courses that you took outside your major.
Yeah. I think, right. I think Dan is, the multicultural studies was one, of course.
Okay.
Really was kind of required within in the degree of study that I was in anyhow.
Huh?
Probably some of the other ones, and this is where I attribute the opportunity to be a part of the Navy Reserve Officer Training Corps, is they had
Yeah.
classes on leadership development. And
Yeah.
what was so fascinating about that was here what I assumed, younger, by latching on to what we called role models then, other teachers. There was actually a fine tuning of educating people to be leaders. And that was really really eye-opening for me. And I think from the time I was a freshman in college, by the time I became a senior, persevering through, grades and studies, and a lot of other challenges along, whether it be from baseball or just growing as a young prospective naval officer, was just the
Yes.
leadership development piece of what I learned was just so valuable, so valuable.
It's a theme that is easy to discern
Mm.
when one looks over your CV and research for a conversation like this. I want to touch on that in depth. Now, I said that I wouldn't take us away from baseball for very long, so I want to sprinkle that in here and there if I may. We talked about the Cincinnati Reds, but I want to steer us back in the right direction and ask you a two-part question. One, Darrell, why are the Kansas City Royals the greatest sports franchise in history? And two, they've changed their operational MO from being a franchise based on loyalty and sticking with their guys to a more transactional approach, like the Rays or the A's. Uh, I loathe this. I want to know your stance on that. We're talking about philosophy through baseball. They even shopped Salvi over the winter. I hope the fan base mutinies.
So I do think it's fascinating that there is a deeper philosophy within the baseball organizations and the programs about how they develop athletes, and just the philosophy behind how they want a program to be long lasting and enduring. So a
You've worked with the pros. You have great insight towards these sorts of things.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because you kind of get a couple different pieces here that fall into place. And one is, if you watch baseball on TV or people watch baseball on TV, it doesn't do justice for the sport because there's really so much more that goes on in a game that they probably have to have every camera angle on so you can see what's happening in a game. And now currently managing and coaching, actively day to day here, there is so much that happens that really the TV doesn't do as much justice for. And even if you're not well educated enough in the sport, you need to sit next to somebody at a ballpark so you can listen to so much more that's happening. The other piece of it is just the quick sound bites, because there's so much rich history that goes in to a program that you don't always hear about when you get the sound bite or a scrolling bar that comes across the TV or a quick update via Twitter or something like that, because baseball has so much rich history behind it. And that's, the depth of the program. And we know that because today, right? Today, is it not Jackie Robinson Day?
Yes.
And so there's a lot of rich history there. And again, Jackie Robinson has a story to tell. So we celebrate Jackie Robinson Day on the day in which he joined Major League Baseball, when in fact, one of the things that he used to talk about a lot was having an impact on others. And so the rich history of what he brought to baseball, and it still is enduring, says a lot. And so,
Yes.
sorry, I can't really comment too much on the Royals being one of the greatest, but I think the Reds and the Royals, if they could get them to the World Series together, Dan, then maybe we could argue that one.
Oh, that would be delightful. Absolutely. Now, Darrell, let's go to your graduation day at Iowa State University. What was your next step? What was on the table? Uh, I know that you continued to play baseball the rest of your life for many years, but did you discern that you were walking away in some point at that stage, or it was around then that I think that you joined the Navy full time?
Yeah, no, great question, because prior to me graduating from Iowa State University, like I had mentioned earlier, I walked on my freshman year, walked on my sophomore year, played a little bit of stint for the summertime in between my sophomore and junior year. And then at that point, at the end of that summer, having played baseball like that, you realize some of the guys that you're surrounded with, they're very good. Uh,
Yeah.
And so you start to realize, I wonder where my future really might be. And so I think, I have obviously had many divine interventions that have probably pointed me in the right direction that I've had to, listen to, and then finally make a decision to do the right things. But when I graduated and I earned my commission as a naval officer, it was in the mindset of it's time to grow as a naval officer and learn to lead and then take off and embark on some adventures. Although baseball was really still in the back of my mind. It's something like, what, someday, somehow, something might work out. And so upon my graduation day, received my commission as a naval officer, and then they was sent off to San Diego, California, where I served my first tour, actually multiple tours, about 7 years that I spent in San Diego, California, which again was almost paralleling to the fact of small town Iowa farm kid goes to major university, eye-opening experience. Here was another one of those small town Midwest college, if you will, off to San Diego to embark on another adventure.
Absolutely. And there in San Diego, baseball does manifest itself once again in a different sort of way. You met your lovely wife, Terry, at a San Diego Padres game at Jack Murphy Stadium.
Yeah. Yeah. So a pretty exciting date night there when you can get to the when you can take your wife to be to a San Diego Padres when it was still Jack Murphy Stadium, show a military ID, get $7 tickets, go to the cheap seats, and then about the third inning you move right on down, and then you show her a really awesome time while you're right behind the clubhouse seats and the
That's how it works.
Padres.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Darrell, from your perspective, for what kind of a kid is the military a good option in your estimation?
Yeah. So we used to talk about what an experience, especially the experience I had. It's a great opportunity for everyone. We would say that, and I think it was very true, and I still believe it's still true today, is it's a cross section of society. You get every walks of life. Um,
Yes.
and again, right back to everybody has a story. And I really believe that from the leadership development that I've had over the years is to listen, to respect, be kind, because everybody has a different story to tell and the background that they have. And there's no better place to be than around people who offer an eye-opening different perspective on things.
Yes.
Well, that's what I think we saw. We saw every walks of life, people coming into the military and into the Navy, and those are some of the greatest friendships that I have is and still connected today with folks that I served in the Navy and in the military with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. You mentioned leadership development and leadership. I suggested earlier that as one peruses your CV and your background, several themes manifest themselves uh, in a pattern repeatedly. Baseball, we've been talking about already, but education is another one, and leadership is yet another one. And I think those combine in many ways in your life experience. Beginning with the first of those, though, I know that you hold a master's degree from the University of Missouri in curriculum and instruction. And I'd like to know how that came about and what was your experience like there at Missouri?
So and again, it's really very interesting because the time that I spent in San Diego as a naval officer, I was on two different surface ships,
Yeah.
deployed on a number of occasions, which was great. Again, I got to travel the world and see a lot of different things, go to a lot of different and interesting places worldwide. And then as the Navy offered, it was about every 2 to 3 years, they wanted you to continue to develop. They wanted to put you into positions that made you grow. And one of the opportunities I had was a set of assignment was to go back to the University of Missouri as an ROTC instructor. So it was a great opportunity for me to give what I had received as a student there. And so that's what I did. I went to the University of Missouri, was there for 3 years, was an instructor, And at that point, while I was there, I was also able to earn my degree, a master's degree in curriculum instruction.
And you taught a course there that sounded really fascinating to me. Principles of Leadership and Ethics.
Yeah. Yeah. So while you're there, you get a number of different assignments. We were a part of the Department of Engineering. And so one of the courses that we offered up, in addition to like introduction to naval science, I also taught a course on navigation where you could put different projects together, as well as talk about just celestial navigation and then electronic measures. But then also, as you got more developed as a junior and a senior, they offered a course in leadership develop. And so I was asked to lead that course. And so when you go into things like that, you've got to put together the material to make sure that it's becoming really appealing to those that are learning from that. And you're not just speaking from self-talk. You're sharing other stories of those who have gone before us, successes and not such successful things that have been done, because that's how we grow, by doing things hopefully the correct way, but also by learning from our mistakes. So it was a wonderful class to teach. Again, very humbled to be able to be a part of that.
Absolutely. Now, on that subject of leadership, Darrell, I know that both me and cast director Lori Romano reaped the huge benefit beginning in the cast office at that point, first year experience in transition under your tutelage and leadership. So I know the impact that effective leadership can make. But I also, throughout my time in higher ed, see a lot of people who seek leadership positions for the wrong reasons. To climb the ladder, it's a lot more about professionally climbing the ladder than it is about serving others. So I'm a little jaded sometimes on that topic, but I've always wondered, and I want to, with that sort of cynical backdrop, is really the true definition of leadership the number of followers that you have, as opposed to some job title?
Yeah. So I laugh with you when you say cynical, because myself and many others that I've served with in the military, retired and still active duty, that I have those conversations with, we don't call ourselves cynical. We just call ourselves critical. And so we just want to make sure that we're making good decisions, and we're critical of how we did things and maybe how others are doing it. And in that conversation, Dan, we have those regularly about leadership and what we're doing, and are we really learning, from our mistakes. And so we used to talk a lot about covenant leadership. And actually, a chief of naval operations many years ago talked about covenant leadership, and that being, we do it just because we do it. That's just what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to care for your people. You're supposed to help them succeed. You're supposed to get to know them, and so that was a style that I really bought into and I thought was really important. And so it was really contrary to contractual leadership, which was, you do this and I'll do that for you. But if you don't do this, then I won't do this for you. And so I think sometimes we get those that are in positions of leadership that put themselves in a self-serving position, and they like to think about their title is what gives them the authority and the power, when in fact it's the selfless leaders who really are having a greater impact. Because all too often, I think those that want to get into positions of authority, they like the idea of that position, but we often don't think about what all that really means, and all of the other avenues that you have an opportunity to help others and to make an impactful way of making decisions that just come along that you don't know about. But if you're going to accept that role as a leader, then you better be ready to be put in an area where you feel a little bit uncomfortable to make those decisions.
Absolutely. Well said. Now, I want to circle back for just a minute, if I may. You said something earlier, we discussed, I think, for a moment earlier, baseball as metaphor for life, and just all the different ways that important concepts and life lessons coincide and intersect with baseball and whatnot. I want to know your thoughts about that, as baseball as metaphor for life. And one of the things that I think that it does, baseball that is that it brings people together that come from very different backgrounds or walks of life in ways that other sports doesn't, or don't rather. I mean, the two of us rascals, for instance, come from different backgrounds, but we share important things in common. Our sense of humor, our love of baseball, our love of quilting. Um, and but baseball can bring people together in a unique way. Would you say so?
Oh, absolutely. And um, the really neat thing too is when you're on a team like that with baseball, and you get all the guys together, and you get to know each other a little bit. You start to find out how diverse everybody is and where they have come from in different walks of their life and what their interests are. So even though you're a team, you may have pockets of guys that do this, another pocket that does this, but everybody has like special interests. But when you bring them all together, you're all under, the common cause, which is to come together as a team and try to be as successful as you possibly can. So like
Beautiful.
you bring up the great point about the quilting. I mean, that's awesome. If it's
Yes.
lyrical dance that we do, it's all a great time.
Right. I would like to reflect on that time when you started at the University of Nebraska as an academic success coach in the first year experience in transition program, and became interim director and then founding director of the UNL Military and Veteran Success Center. Uh, what was that experience? What was that time like for you? Uh, is there an aspect of higher ed that you especially miss?
Yeah, the transition that happened for me after a right serving 25 years in the Navy, and again, very grateful for all the experiences that I had and so many mentors and leaders along the way that helped guide me. Really kind of helped define the title that we put a part of the Military Veteran Success Center, which is, success doesn't happen alone. You need others around you to help guide you and to help you through that process of growing. And so when I did the transition from the United States Navy to working at the University of Nebraska, I felt like it was an incredibly easy transition, on a couple of counts. Because one, while I was in the Navy, I felt like our role, amongst being around a bunch of sailors, was to care for them, is to help them grow and to help them to become better leaders, and just to experience life and then point them in directions that might be helpful for them. Coming to the
Mhm.
University of Nebraska was really no different. I felt like when I joined the first year experience program, is what it was called then, and now, the Center for Academic Success and Transition. That's exactly what we were supposed to do. We should help, engage the students. We should help empower them, help support them, and that's the kind of same message that I drug into along with me when I went to the Military Veterans Center. And then the second piece of it was I left an environment in the United States Navy where you were surrounded by people who were professionals, who really, really wanted to become better. And I felt like when I got to the University of Nebraska, it was the same case. I was surrounded by my colleagues who really, really felt like it was important to be the best that they could be. So I thought that was a really great transition and a good fit to be there.
I remember you as our interim director in a couple of pretty important ways. You're a master storyteller. We talked about that earlier, and I learned a lot through some of your stories that way, and they were also really entertaining as well. But also, You are a master at using humor as levity. When things are really busy or, everybody's stressed out, you can set everyone at ease with a couple of funny words. And I believe in the power of humor in that capacity. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, there's a great little saying that was out there that talked about, about humor, in a difficult situation. So when times are tough, and you're in a tight or a difficult situation, um, having a little bit of levity and humor isn't being naive. It's actually called leadership. Um,
Yes.
it can bring folks together and maybe put things into a perspective. So I've learned that over the years, and I think probably just like what the military taught me to do, which was to make good decisions in life, not only for myself but for others. So having the opportunity to be a part of, um, you and Lori both being at Nebraska was probably some of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Oh, wow. The pleasure is all ours, I'm sure of it. Now, talking about when the times get rough, it's not easy to be a baseball fan in a couple of important ways, I would say. Baseball, perhaps more than any other sport, is a game of failure. And it takes a special mindset to be able to endure and persevere under those circumstances, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. No, I agree. There's far more failures and successes if you define it as
Yeah.
batting average or a win-loss percentage.
You bet. Absolutely. And Darrell, what is up with all of these people that say baseball is too slow? I think of it, even the great Mark Twain once said, and I quote, "The successful hits come too laggingly, wherefore the game doth lack excitement." I disagree entirely. If I'm watching baseball, I'm by definition at my leisure. And why would I want to curtail my free time? How do you see that? Is
See,
it too slow?
you know, it, I think again we've lost a little bit of the excitement of where baseball came from, the sport of rounders. Um,
Yeah.
called and baseball was normally played on the weekends when you'd get the families together. There'd be a picnic, and we're talking way back. And a single game would last days, right? It would start on a Saturday, and you would have a picnic. And the baseball game, a single game, would last all day Saturday, and it would last all the way into Sunday after folks would go off to their different religious services, and then they would play baseball for the rest of the day on Sunday, and that would be one game. And so, of
Wow.
course, it has transitioned quite a bit to having a pitch clock now and speeding the game up, I think. Yeah.
How times have changed, huh? My goodness.
Uh,
Now, I want to hear how things have been in your current position as head coach of the mighty Gretna East Griffins. That has got to be exhilarating to have your own squad.
it's exciting. It's very exciting. So I spent last season with the Gretna High Dragons, and then was again humbled. And I always believe it has to do with some kind of divine intervention that has put me in the place um, to be given the opportunity to coach and to put together a program at Gretna East High School, which is a new high school, just opened up this last fall. And then you can build that program, um, hopefully, right, with everything that you've gained over the years to put a successful program together. And so, one of the key things to do is to empower, right, the
Mhm.
students, and the players to have a say in things and to make sure that they feel as if there's a buy-in and the correct environment that you want it to be, as well as making sure that when you make hires with the coaching staff that you put together, you have nothing but the highest quality and character in those coaches as well. And you're surrounding these young kids with great leaders. So we've had an absolutely great year. It's been a lot of fun. We still got a couple more weeks left in the spring season, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to put something together, but it's every bit worth it.
Will you work with the Legion team in the summers or?
Yep, yep, we will. We
Okay.
will have Gretna East will have its own separate American Legion program as well. So we'll offer 3 teams there, which will continue this run of playing baseball all through the summer.
Absolutely. Think of the development of those kids over the time that way. That's awesome.
You
Very
know,
good.
it's a good thing, Dan, because when you bring on these coaches in the spring, that's a commitment in itself to ask these coaches to give up the time and everything they want to be a part of it. And then the summer with the Legion is another great deal of time and commitment. And our spring coaches have all said, "Hey, can we stick around and do this in the summer?" So that's like music to your ears when you hear that.
It sure is. That's
Yeah.
terrific. Absolutely. Darrell, you've worked with big time pro baseball players in your time at Empowered Baseball Academy. How is that different? Uh, and what sort of satisfaction do you get differently from working with that kind of player as to young high school kids?
Yeah, it's similar but different, right?
Okay.
The approach to um talking with them always is with respect and asking them to try to find out what it is that they know. With the younger hitters, your high school guys, they may have had instructional help before. They may not have. They may just be
Mhm.
naturally skilled and they're still learning and they're trying to get the feel, right? And part of my Empowered Baseball Academy program is the underlying theme of what you want every baseball player at the very young age and as a hitter to be, is which is empowered. And so you want them to understand when they get up to bat, they feel their swing, they identify a pitch location. The result is a result, but they're empowered to make those changes. Whereas, a parent or another person could be yelling out corrections or things that they should be doing. Empowered Baseball Academy is getting our athletes to understand they're in charge, they're empowered.
Mm.
I have the ability to make these changes. I know how to learn from my mistakes. And all the way up to the higher level, which I've worked with minor league guys that are out there playing currently. It's another great experience because when I get together to hit and train with those guys, whether I'm traveling out to Arizona or to Florida, or they come out here to my academy, I just ask them, what are you working on? What are you feeling? And so I'm learning the process from them. And then when you can, you give them a nugget. You give them something that, are you thinking about this? And then they might include that. And then it becomes just this respectful dialogue that you have. So we're both growing. I mean, that's
Mhm.
what a great environment.
Uh, I'm thinking about that word empowered that keeps reoccurring in our talk here. And I think of it as you're really giving agency to young people when you work with them in that way. That way you're empowering them, you're giving them agency over their own direction. That seems so important.
Very much. I mean, and it's a carryover. We talk about baseball, but then we talk about what are you going to do after high school, and
Yeah.
and how are things going with your family, and it's just kind of a decision making process, and you hope that those elements of leadership development, right, they bleed over. So whereas we've been talking about baseball as an underlying theme throughout of our discussion here, Dan, there's elements of leadership and being a great citizen, being a great teammate in life with a friend, a family member. That's all the real serious, important underlying pieces.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. Now, Darrell, I'd like to know, what is your daily life like now? Are you just busy as all get out as the head coach of the Griffins now?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because what I used to do a lot more personal training
Yeah.
with the academy and then traveling between out in Phoenix, Arizona, and then also down in Fort Myers, Florida. Those have really kind of dialed back on that because this first year of establishing a program is a lot more than just managing a game. We've done everything, from, reaching out to the community, um, making sure you have good relationships with the parents. I tell all of our young athletes at the high school that they have parent agents. Their parents are unconditionally love those kids And the other important thing is they're your agent. So if you need another set of batting gloves, they probably are the ones that are going to find you a pair of batting gloves and outfit you and things like that. So that has really been a really important thing to do, is to spend a lot of time. We've created a booster program, and they are out to serve everybody but themselves, right? They're out to serve the students. And that's what we talk about the coaches, because it's not about us. It's never about us. It's about others. It's about the kids. And so that's really taken a big piece of the time, although I still find time to do training with others in some different locations, and then spending time with my family, and occasionally going to the gym and getting a workout in, and hopefully spending time with you.
Oh, that would be dynamite. Now, talking about natural swings and things like that, do you feel like there's much you can do for me in that department? Or do I pretty much have the pieces together? George Brett said, there's no such thing as natural talent. No one knows how hard I worked. Showing up at 5 a.m. to the ballpark to work with the great Charlie Lau. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I think I've seen you take some swings before. I think it's completely natural.
Yes.
I think you and I could go into business, and we can teach a lot of folks things about baseball and leadership development. And so you'd said something about George Brett, and yeah, he was an amazing ball player, and I'm sure you remember the game with the pine tar and all of those things.
Yes.
With him. But I once met Pete Rose and asked him if he thought he could get into the Hall of Fame. And he said, well, if I was a betting man, $50, I bet I can.
I love it. I love it. And it's also the first time anybody's ever described me as completely natural. So thank you for that. Darrell, as we close here, I've got a final question for you. And it's really a question for you and Terry, but you've been to so many interesting places over long careers in the military. You've lived different places, yet you've chosen to make your home here in Nebraska. What's behind that?
Yeah. I think it has a lot to do with I was raised in the Midwest, and I have the fondest of memories growing up, a really kind of a simple lifestyle. And then being around people who genuinely cared. And so having lived on the West Coast in San Diego, and having lived on the East Coast in Virginia and up in Rhode Island, having traveled the world and lived in different parts of the countries, there's really no place, like we say, like Nebraska. And there's a lot of truth to that. And so it's so wonderful being back home and settling in the Midwest. I'm a little bit closer to obviously my other extended family and a lot of friends. So this is just a great place to be. And I think this is where we're probably going to stay for a long time, and hopefully stay connected with you and Lori and others.
Oh, that's awesome. Darrell, thank you so much for your graciousness and time here today. This has been awesome. I've learned a lot.
Well, thank you. And again, very grateful for the opportunity to have worked with you at the University of Nebraska. Thank you for keeping in touch. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. And I know firsthand all of the things that the University of Nebraska, and particularly your office, what you all provide, by getting students to be engaged and empowering them, and then also to get them to be in the mindset of feeling like they've got support with all of you. I know that firsthand, having been there. And so all the students at UNL are very, very fortunate to be able to have you as that support group, and Lori as well. She's just an amazing, wonderful person. And aside for the fact that I think she's a Mets fan, I can't figure that one out. But you all are a great team.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Darrell. That's great of you to say. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir.
Take care now.
Thank you.